AskReddit by world's biggest narcissist. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. What is a real-life example of this? The unexpected consequences of your donations. Tom Shoes, a company that pledged to donate a pair of shoes to a child in need for every pair purchased. Turns out that the company's donations disrupted local shoe markets in developing countries, putting local shoemakers out of business and creating a dependency on foreign donations. Additionally, the shoes donated by Toms were not always appropriate for the local climate or culture and were not always of the same quality as the shoes being sold. Reportedly, they have ended up in landfills. When I took a trip to Kenya in the late 2000s, Toms were a huge deal. I bought some for the trip thinking, hey, if they make these for the people there, they must work well in that climate. Wrong. Their soles are useless. The thorns and prickles in the grasses there go straight through them. Never bought another pair. A man named Dr. Spark wrote a handbook for jewelry ring. It was widely circulated and well received. Many of our parents likely got their jewelry ring advice from this book. In it he recognized that babies throw up a lot and therefore recommended newborns be laid on their stomachs to sleep. Unknowingly, this would result in the accidental smothering deaths of thousands of newborns. A huge number of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, cases can be laid at his feet. To this day the Back to Sleep campaign is still fighting to update parents on what we now know. Newborns should sleep on their backs until they can reliably roll over for themselves. My mom woke up in an absolute panic, having no idea why. She ran to check on my brother, who was a newborn at the time. He was face down drowning in his vomit. I feel so sorry for every parent who lost their child that way, because my mom would have never recovered. Difficult to think of a better one than prohibition and the war on drugs. Both are well-meaning. Alcohol and drugs can and do destroy lives. But banning them causes massive problems with gangs and crime to facilitate the illegal provision of things that people ultimately want. Regulation is what's needed. The introduction of kudzu for erosion control. It has become invasive and girdles and kills plant life above ground without establishing proper roots, therefore causing soil erosion. So apparently kudzu is not the sole plant that does this. There are other invasive vines, also from Asia, that grow similarly but all get lumped together with kudzu. Also, I thought it was initially introduced for livestock foraging. Trying to rescue too many cats. I worked at a cat shelter for a few years. It always sucked whenever we got an intake from a hoarding situation. It was always at least a dozen cats who had a laundry list of health problems and were practically feral. Sheltering your kid from every possible problem. The whole stranger danger thing did a number on the American psyche. Never letting your kids out of the house unsupervised for fear of the unbelievably small chance of a random stranger kidnapping them has had far-reaching negative consequences for generations. The introduction of non-native species as a means of solving an environmental problem. Hawaii resident here. It's been the bane of our existence. Invasive species goes all the way back to Polynesians. They brought pigs and chickens for food. They cause all sorts of problems now that they are wild. We also have mongoose. Rats were decimating the local bat population. So the government released mongoose to handle the problem. However, mongoose are diurnal and rats are nocturnal. So instead of going after the rats, they went after the birds. Cats. Brought as pets, now they are an ecological menace. They love eating the local birds. See a pattern? Edit. Rats eat bird eggs, not the birds themselves. It has the same impact to the population though. Zero tolerance in schools. Now the bullied kids are being punished. I agree that zero tolerance policies are stupid, but I have to say that, as a kid, it cleared up a lot of concerns for me about whether or not it would be worth it to fight back if someone started swinging at me. Once they implemented that zero tolerance, there was never a question of, can I stay out of trouble by not fighting back? As soon as a punch was thrown, whoever was on the receiving end had nothing to lose. One of my classmates, after finishing a fight he didn't start, turned around and promptly did start a fight with the other guy's friend, because he knew he was going to get suspended anyway and wanted to get his money's worth. Lobotomy. Surgery to fix the mentally unwell. It sounds so good. No more reliance on medication. You're good from now on. But it didn't work. The outcomes were awful and it was frequently done without any sort of consent. It all could have been shut down fairly quickly if people were honest about what was happening. But careers and money was at stake, so many unnecessarily suffered. Several years ago I heard a case from the 50s or so where a young boy was lobotomized for his poor behavior. 7 years old, lobotomized for being forgetful and reading late at night. On a personal scale, trying to help a really drunk person. I'm a woman and talkative, and I started talking to another woman at a bar who was really drunk. She told me her friends deserted her, so I said she could hang out with me and my friends as it was my birthday, to keep an eye on her and because she seemed fun. Then she started falling off of chairs and spilling drinks, so I encouraged her to get a cab. She started crying how everyone hates her as I was helping her outside, but agreed to go home. I got a cab, paid for it because she was a mess, and all of a sudden she got really violent and ended up kicking me in the face trying to get out of the cab because she wasn't done. She pushed me and told me to fuck off, but ultimately sat back down in the cab crying. We had already exchanged numbers, so the next day she texted me apologizing profusely and asking if we could stay friends. I told her I appreciated her apology but no thanks. I will always try to help people where I can, but that turned me off from going above and beyond. Plus, you can rarely rationalize with really drunk and upset people. I used to be a cabbie in a college town. I didn't try to rationalize with the drunks once they're problematic. I rationalize with them. It's really easy to derail their problematic behavior by asking unexpected questions or saying some non-upsetting, incorrect fact. Do you think the Lions will win the Super Bowl? The Lions haven't ever made it to the Super Bowl. I feel like Dynamite is a pretty great example. He literally just made it for mining and was so horrified by people using it on other people he made the Nobel Peace Prize. Add in that it was falsely reported that he died, so he got to read his own obituary, which made him see what his legacy would be. It was actually his brother who had died. That led him to leave 94% of his fortune to the Nobel Foundation, who financially administer the awards. Side note, it was interesting that all the awards are decided by Sweden, except the Peace Prize, which is awarded by Norway. Since the abysmal performance of American schools has been in the news recently, No Child Left Behind and its replacement Every Student Succeeds Act. America has never had really good public education, but it used to be serviceable. NCLB came in to try and create some milestones and accountability. Instead, it made the problem worse. ECSS came in and tried to address its problems, but changed the stuff that wasn't the problem and left the bad parts unscathed. Taken altogether, 57% of high school graduates can't read at a 7th grade reading level and over a quarter are functionally illiterate. On a related note, the development and implementation of cueing theory and similar non-phonics-based reading education was very well intentioned but has turned out to be disastrous for actual reading comprehension. Unfortunately, it's still the prevalent model in many US school districts. The recent podcast's older story is a great distillation of the issue for anyone interested. Most moral panics. Stranger danger. Convincing people in the 1970s that hundreds of thousands of American children were being yoinked into random cars by evil strangers each year, while downplaying and underfunding the resources that could actually help decrease child abduction. Child abductions not only never came anywhere near those huge numbers, but it was and still is nearly always a custodial issue or a very close family member. Teaching people to be wary of kidnapping is great. Directing all their fears toward vague spooky strangers and not helping people learn how to actually prevent kidnapping is kinda shit. The bigger impact was on the kids born in the late 90s and onward. The stranger danger era basically created an entire generation of paranoid helicopter parents. Probably a bad example, but tossing tires into the ocean to make a reef. https://www.npr.org/2007/070/fallout-from-bad-70s/idea-auto-ocean-reef I think that would qualify for the road to hell as paved with mind-blowingly stupid ideas. During one of China's extreme dry seasons, think of their Dust Bowl period, Mao ordered the killing of birds to prevent bird-eating seeds and so increase agricultural productivity. Instead, what happened is that birds that feeded on plants' pests were killed, making the situation even worse and resulting on the death of millions. A bad dry season, deforestation, misuse of pesticides and a war against nature under his belief that conquering nature was the way to improve agricultural yield and so the well-being of their citizens. Stupid uninformed decisions, even if seemingly rational to laymen, resulting in one of the biggest human and ecological cost disasters. We still making such decisions from time to time, sometimes for profit on the belief that such will benefit all and sometimes for genuine good reasons. Federally backed student loans. Once money was guaranteed, colleges jacked up tuition and continue to do so, with no end in sight. Also, the US government made bankruptcy involving student loans impossible. No Child Left Behind. Most moronic project ever. Oh, this school has bad grades? Let's slash funding. Helping someone by enabling them in their self-destructive behaviors. Sometimes you help someone by denying them what they say they want. Balloon Fest of '86. They released 1.5 million balloons in Cleveland for a world record, and it literally impeded the Coast Guard in the rescue for two fishermen, Raymond Broderick and Bernard Saltzer, who died because they didn't get to them in time. It shut down the airport, highways, it caused traffic accidents. Bulldozers had to be used to clear the way. It was all for charity. People still find balloon remnants in the water. The Aramid Arsehole comment section. I saved a baby from a burning building but had to break a window in the process. Eta? Keeping on trying to help someone so desperately that you lose sight of your own actions and end up hurting everyone around you by neglecting your own health and becoming overly defensive of that person, even insulting and attacking others for them. This can happen too fast when you fall in love with a bad person. Don't set yourself on fire because someone else is chilly. The DARE program. Best thing that came out of DARE was when a wasp got into the classroom and my 5th grade teacher grabbed the DARE binder and smashed the insect while loudly proclaiming, "How dare you." The beginning of any political journey, I suspect. The Wire did this really well with Carcetti. Young idealist who sees all the flaws with the system gradually devolve as he moves up the ladder. A lot of old programs centered around weight and eating disorders just led to kids being more conscious about being judged about their weight despite the intentions of wanting to prevent bullying or healthy weight. It did not even matter if it was anti-anorexia or wanting to decrease obesity. Also in my school they showed us pro-ana sites with like a beware message, and I also could not help thinking that this talk was the only reason I knew they existed. Currently the focus is more on eating healthy instead of weight. Still has some pitfalls, such as orthorexia. Yep, not weighing myself or counting calories is the healthiest way for me to eat. Had an eating disorder as a kid with some obsessive habits. I recall hearing that the person behind the like function of Facebook legitimately just saw it as a nice way for people to show others what they like, or a way to positively react on things. It turned out that it has a huge negative impact on social cognition, such as teenagers, especially girls, unfortunately, developing depression. classifying smart kids with high-functioning autism as gifted and putting them in separate or older kid classes where they don't really learn to socialize while crushing their childhoods with academic responsibilities and telling them they're special. They probably thought they were gonna create a generation of rocket scientists, and I'm sure there are a few, but mostly it just resulted in people totally unprepared for adulthood with severe self-esteem issues. The invention of social media. When Tom was working at Friendster, I genuinely believed he wanted to build something that allowed people to socialize and communicate in a new and modern way. On paper, early MySpace is a brilliant concept that made a lot of people realize the potential of the internet. This concept was that mutilated and turned into what social media is today. Quite possibly the single most socially damaging invention that ever happened. Far away from bringing people closer together, it has turned into a tool that is tearing people further apart, making them feel more disconnected with society than ever, and instead of democratizing discussion, it has put even more power into the hands of the elite. Tom was MySpace, not Friendster. Friendster was founded by Jonathan Abrams. He's notable for passing up a $30 million stock purchase offer by Google, which would be worth about $1 billion today. He also tried to take home a drunk friend of mine once at a Los Gatos bar after a few of us told him to go away multiple times. That was like 20 years ago though. Seems like he's grown up a lot since then. There is a series on YouTube, Great Moments and Unintended Consequences, which has many examples. Adobe Flash. To be honest, I loved making animations in Flash. That was real fun. Letting a friend stay on your couch until they get back on their feet. It usually results in the end of the friendship, and occasionally an eviction process involving police. I did this. Gave someone 3 years to get their act together. The whole time they just took advantage of the situation and never took a single step to better themselves.